Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more, they all know. Vice, Lotus and Friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 114, or the continuation of Reactive Consciousness for September 18th, 2018, where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I am your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And OldManStompy.
And we are here to conclude our discussion about the Nintendo Direct that happened last week, so please enjoy.
And I am just seething with anticipation to talk about one particular topic that Vice maybe will let me talk about near the end, if we have a little bit of time.
I will forget about it.
Great. I'm glad we came to an agreement early on in the podcast before I'm inevitably disappointed an hour later.
All right, well, let's plan on forgetting and having you only care about that one little topic. But we should carry on and get to talking about Nintendo's online strategy. The online service, actually, the pricing is reasonable, much more reasonable than I thought it would be. So they announced the details of that. So $20 for the year, which is very good for an online service. I don't know of anything that even comes close to that in terms of pricing. It does give you access to NES games. Looks like a pretty wide breadth of games, too, with some third-party games in there, I saw. There are some issues with it, but by and large, I thought it was pretty decent. I know there are a lot of people complaining and bitching about it, but I don't actually see it as a total terrible thing. It gives you access to Nintendo games, and you have to connect to the internet once per 7 days, which I don't think is that bad, to be honest. I mean, that's how Steam works. And
Steam
I
is
know some people
30
hate
days,
that.
I think, for most games. So that's a big difference. Okay,
well, still, I mean... Are you going to be away from a Wi-Fi hotspot for 7 days in most cases?
With me, it's the same thing as it is, for my opinion, between Steam and GOG. It's the principle of the thing. Fuck you, let me buy my games, you know? Or let me, I paid you your money, are we good or what?
So this has been there's been this transition that's been going on now since, the PS3 and the PSP era. Where obviously the digital delivery model has convenience for consumers, but the change in what construes ownership of the rights to play a game is shifting to favor the game companies, and I can understand why people really don't want that to happen. It sucks. Imagine what just happened right now with the Apple TV. There was just
that was garbage.
They delete movies out of your library that you paid for, even if you never watch them, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, you can complain, and they might give you some free rentals, but they have unless and this happens to enough people that you think that you can, mount a class action lawsuit, then you have no recourse, and that sucks, and it could happen to anybody. In principle, it has never happened to me yet, and I make a habit that when I find out that games are being delisted from the store to go pick them up. But what happened to PT?
Yeah.
Yeah, they took it off of your they prevented you from being able to re-download it.
Yeah, so they're not opposed to really exerting some strict control over, and that's partially their prerogative. But you don't. It's not it's aside from GOG. It's not there's some other alternative where you can play Nintendo Online games without putting up with their bullshit.
But that's the thing, because I mean, you guys know me. I'm into collecting physical copies of games because I just like it. That's just a little quirk of mine. But at this point, that weird habit is becoming more and more relevant because now I won't have to put up with the game developers or not even game developers, the hosts of whatever online access, not actively fucking me over and taking away what I own. Even with PSN, I think buying a game really allows you to download it 3 times. Now, on one hand, I don't know why you would even reach that number of times. But on the other hand, no, fuck you. I paid you full price.
It's
5 times. Okay, so I really don't.
Be on 5 different systems.
Yeah. So I really don't expect people to actually reach that number. But either way, fuck you. I paid for the game full price. Get out of my face.
So that's been like fairly standard lately. That even in like the with the sharing systems that like Xbox has for the family, there's a certain number of systems that you're limited to downloading your thing on. Otherwise, you just share your account details with everybody, and you'd post them on a forum somewhere, and everybody would just sign into your account and play all your games. Like it definitely. I understand the complaint. Believe me, I totally.
It does. No, I do get it for downloading different systems. I'm talking about like the number of times you're allowed to download it like on your account at all, though. Like.
Oh no, you can do that infinitely.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, you can delete something and then download it again later.
Okay, that is a different case then.
Otherwise, how would you manage your memory cards? Like,
well, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not an issue. The major one that you're probably thinking of is the Nintendo account migration, like from one system to another.
Sounds familiar.
So when the big thing was like I think it started all the way back with the DSi, like switching your account from the DSi to the 3DS and then the 3DS to another 3DS and then that to a new 3DS. You were getting drastically close to, unless you like let's say if you broke a system and wanted to shift it to another one, you're getting close to your 5 limit. Which is what I think you were talking about.
Yeah, and honestly, that just like something like that. Again, how many times are you going to download the same game multiple times? I get it, but that's the kind of thing that would discourage me from buying new systems. Like, I'm the kind of person who waits for the greatest hits version of a game with all the DLCs out. Now I would wait for the new 3DS XL before even trying a 3DS.
So it unfortunately punishes some of the most loyal Nintendo consumers, because like the way this happens is that you bought every single DS when it came out, you played it so much that you might have had to buy an extra one somewhere in the middle, and now you've run out of your systems to download your thing to, and you have to buy them all over again.
Yeah, this is why I have cartridges. Like, I'll put it in the system as often as I want.
So I think really my major complaint about this type of service, I don't mind paying $20 a year for it. I think that's perfectly fine for an online service. I think that's very reasonable, because the Sony one is very good and is $50 a year, and the Xbox one is also very good, and that's around $50 a year. So $20 a year isn't bad for an online service, especially one that has content, with games and stuff. My major issue with it is that in an era where there are digital streaming services for things like TV shows or movies, if one service isn't hosting something, usually something else is. There are very rarely, this day and age, it's actually very rare that you can't find a movie that you want to watch streaming somewhere. Even you can buy a digital version of it somewhere, at least on Amazon. So I was looking up an obscure like sequel to a Three Musketeers movie, a Michael York Three Musketeers movie, and lo and behold, I found that giant mosquito movie on Amazon. And that movie, I had such a hard time finding a rare DVD of that because it was a very low print run and people wanted it. So like it was like $100 DVD, and I bought it for like $6, like a couple years ago now. It was just a movie that I loved from watching in my teenage years that I thought was hilarious. So you can find any movie somewhere, either on a streaming service, somewhere on demand or whatever. But here's the thing: video games are not set up like that. Not in the slightest, and that's why a lot of people are getting upset by these ROM sharing sites being torn down, because it's a preservation issue, and I'm there with you.
The thing about that is, 10 years ago, I would have been angry if ISO Zone were taken down, but I would have understood. I'd have been like, that fucking sucks, but I get it. But at this point, though, I do feel differently, because now there are so many services or so many like things that are offered, like Steam or GOG, that piracy, I feel, is becoming less of a thing because it's so easy, cheap, and convenient to just buy the games you want. Like, it actually is easier and probably safer for you.
That is true, and that's like what people have always like yelled and screamed at from the top of the mountains, that the most effective way to combat piracy is to make it easier to get a hold of these games.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
not to make it harder.
Yeah, and the thing is, now we're in an era where it is easier. There's Virtual Console, there's the eShop, there's PSN, there's Steam, there's GOG. Like, if you want your game, you can have it, and there are frequent sales, so the price doesn't always have to be a gatekeeper either. So it's easier to get games now than ever when they're being offered.
Also
but
music,
when it comes...
And also movies.
Yeah, well, yeah, but focusing on the game specifically, though, so, like, now people use ISOZone for, like, the weird stuff, like the fan-translated stuff that never made it here, or stuff that isn't available on any of these free sites. Like, in the early 2000s, it was a free-for-all, and again, I would have hated it if it were shut down, but I would have understood it. But now, it just seems like a petty move that isn't as necessary now as it was... would have been in the early 2000s.
Like Vice said, it's partially about preservation, and there are some games that there will just never be. Like, there will never be, I think, at least not for many, many years. You know, for example, some place you can go to get all 800 whatever US NES games. That will probably never happen. The NES Virtual Console will never be complete.
Yeah.
There will be games like No One Lives Forever that may never get re-released for the rest of time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of some obscure, like legal fight, and as a result, no one will ever get to play that game, and the software could just get lost. It's a shame right now that, for example, we will never see large amounts of Doctor Who. We've mentioned this a couple times in the show. That's sort of one of the most notorious examples.
No, they reclaimed a big chunk of it.
So they did, but
they reclaimed a big chunk of it. They found it almost all of the lost episodes in South Africa.
I don't think it's as complete as you think it is. I think the entire second Doctor, or almost all of it, is still missing. I know there was a guy who was like going to look for it in South Africa, because like any place where there was like a large concentration of like British descendants is liable to have at least some Doctor Who like lying around. But like the problem was, I mean, like, it's great that they found parts of it and they're still like digging up more. But like the reason they had this problem was because they just overwrote all of the media that was used to film it originally. Because like, who the hell?
They've lost almost every silent film ever because of that. Only a very small portion of silent films were preserved.
So you have this opportunity to create this non-local store that doesn't have these, this problem for software, and it's down to like a relatively small community of very dedicated individuals who don't really care about the profitability of the games. They just want to have it, for posterity.
Yeah, and by the way, tying into that idea, sites like Emu Paradise and MU Paradise and ISOZone, the thing about those is, piracy is everywhere, and you could probably search those individual games again if you really wanted to. But Emu Paradise and ISOZone are like,
they were convenient.
No. OldManStompy already mentioned that. What I mean is that, like, if there is such thing as an official pirate site, like, those were it. Like, they were safe. Like, you wouldn't have to worry about getting a virus by downloading some weird file. Like, no, this is the website where they have the games. This will be the game when you click it to download it. So it was also like again, if it makes sense, a healthy way to pirate.
Yeah, that's the big shame of it. I guess my big thing is that you'll be able to play these NES games, but it'll be only for a limited time. So they'll make deals with Square Enix to have Bubble Bobble on there for a certain amount of years or whatever, and then it'll just disappear, and you won't be able to play it somewhere else. So that's my major problem with this. So like, if they ever come up with something unique, which inevitably they will, in order to
like
service,
WiiWare.
Let's say. Well, how about this? What if they put the translation of Mother 3 on the service? Like, they finally released Mother 3, but this is the only way you could play it. That's gonna suck, because there will be no way, unless hackers, extract it and disseminate it, that people will be able to play that past its expiration.
Well, I mean, it's like what we've already had this with. I mean, again, I said WiiWare, but most of those games were garbage. But Doc Lewis's Punch-Out, you're not buying that now.
Yeah, Yeah, and you couldn't buy it before. It was a limited.
Well, that's true
thing.
too. So yeah, but now there's just too bad you missed it, unless you find some weird obscure file of it online somewhere.
Well, not only that, but like with those games, at least you could get them at that time and then keep them forever. True. Like I still have Doc Lewis's Punch Out. What if there's Mother 3 on Switch finally? You can play it. It's awesome. It's one of the best games ever made. It's one of my top 5 games of all time. I'll even just throw that out there. I love Mother 3, and you can only play it for like 3 or 4 years. What if I want to play that in 10 years?
This is actually a case where things were better in the past because of the inferior technology. Like with the Wii, the regular Wii, you could download stuff and then it's just on your system. The internet sucked, and that's probably why you just download it to your memory card or something. It's like, now you have it.
So what's kind of funny is that if they do decide to release an official translation of Mother 3, it might be worse than the fan translation of Mother 3. Unless they purchase the actual script, because the guy
I heard the fan translators
Mother
offer
3
it.
is like, I'm sure they have.
Yeah, they offer.
But like the guy who did it, like, is one of the top translators in the country.
Yeah.
He translates One Piece. Like, he's not a nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that has been the fan subs versus official subs debate for a long time in anime, because fan subs tend to have an attention to detail that a corporate version just never could, and wouldn't. They give you context a lot of times on fan subs. They'll tell you a historical thing or a cultural thing you would need to understand what's going on in a particular
Not only
scene.
that, but it also depends on what's being prioritized, because what I've noticed in at least one instance of official subs is that I think they try to sync them up with the official dubs. So like the mouth movements will make sense for the dub, and then the sub will remain consistent with that, because otherwise you'd be like, they're saying two different things. So like occasionally you'll have instances where the anime characters use an English word, but the translation says something different, and it's like, no, I heard the word in my ears. How is the translation different? Like, so there are weird situations like that too.
Sure. Well, regardless, I think they do have cloud saving now. I think the ball about this, like the people crying about this, isn't as bad as you think it is, because I don't think they actually looked into this. So people were complaining that their cloud saves, if they stopped paying for the service, they would lose their cloud saves, which sucks. But they said that you still have the option to do local saves in addition to your cloud saves. So I guess the moral of the story is just keep your saving going. Saves are small.
Well, the PlayStation, it's the
small.
same for PlayStation. Like, I mean, normally it's not an issue with PlayStation, but Mr. Ryu had a PlayStation 4 Bork, and it's like, oh, I guess I should have put that stuff on a USB as well. Like that. Like it's one of those cases.
Well, people were up in arms about that factor, like that they'll lose it if they stop the service. But it can also be a really good thing, because if you lose a system, you can re-download it from the cloud too.
Yeah.
So I think it would be it would suck that if you lost your system and lapsed your online. But I think that's just like an edge case where you had really bad luck all at once. So I actually think that that's on the reasonable side. They should. It would be cool if they kept your saves forever, in a perfect world. But
well, you did just say that saves are small, and I will tell you as a computing professional that one of the cheapest things that you can buy for maintaining some kind of service is hard drive space. It is incredibly cheap, and it's true when you're buying a computer too. Hard drives are extremely cheap. So it seems absurd to me that out of all the sunk costs that Nintendo could put into the system, one of them isn't like trying to maintain your saves in perpetuity. That's just like incredibly cheap of them to do that.
Yeah, saves are like
it's also
kilobytes,
that,
or in some cases
that, like,
megabytes.
Not every major game, including some very important ones, don't have cloud saving enabled at all. Like, one of the most notable ones is Splatoon 2. They announced they will not allow cloud saving, and that's dire, because the leaderboards in Splatoon 2 for the online play are completely useless because it's extremely easy to export your save and upload hacked scores. There was a snapshot of the leaderboard somebody took that was on Nintendo's official site or app or wherever they publish the scores, where the top 4 names of the leaderboard were in order, please use anti-cheat. So
You know what? You know what would be funny? What would be actually what they should do is only cloud save for that game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
Like,
nothing that's actually serious online that has like stakes. Like, it would be absurd to use that much client-side stuff. Almost everything is always server-side on major MMOs and things like that. It's really bizarre that Splatoon 2 not only doesn't do that, but also won't continue to do it now that they have the online service running. And they have, like, some central app, right? That's one of the cool things I think is interesting, although I can't really predict what they're going to do with it and how much they're going to support it, but the idea that they're going to, like, start releasing apps that let you, like, do voice chat with your friends, like, on your smartphone, or, like, track your scores, or like, do some metadata about the game, like, while you're playing on your phone. Like, that's a cool piece of integration that Nintendo hadn't really done yet. All their integration with their handheld, with their consoles, had always been on their own handheld, so putting that on the phone is, like, pretty cool.
Yeah, well, we need to just say a couple quick little things before we leave, because we're running grossly over for this one. Like I said, there's tons to talk about. The only other thing I wanted to talk about with the online here is that they did advertise original Nintendo controllers for the Switch, which I thought were pretty neat, and they look pretty cool. But you can't use them on the side, like in portable mode.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. It was my favorite, my favorite, the most useless line of the Direct. Although it was kind of funny, it was just like, this is the left controller, this is the right controller. they have no distinction except you can plug them into different sides of the Switch, so you can charge them simultaneously. But otherwise, they're just NES controllers, wireless NES controllers.
Well, real quick, I did want to mention that they also announced that the Final Fantasy series is making a huge dump onto the Switch, in a lot of really good ways. So, a
good dump, right? That's.
Well, I was actually going to say, what an interesting choice of words, because they sure seem to dump on Final Fantasy VIII.
So Final Fantasy 7, 9, no 8, notably 10 and 10-2. 10-2 got on there and 8 didn't, which is hilarious.
Well, it's 10 and 10-2. Those were released as a package, and it's the HD remaster, so that actually makes sense.
Well, you know what wasn't released as a package? All of 8's discs, 4 discs, or
I think it was 4.
It was, piece of shit game. Yeah. Anyway, 12. And a remake of World of Final Fantasy. You know what else is being released there? Fucking Crystal Chronicles, and not 8.
And World of Final Fantasy Maxima, Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon, and not Final Fantasy 8.
Yeah, not Final Fantasy 8, the game that introduced Diablos, arguably the coolest summon to this day.
They used that in 14, too. He was so cool, they put him in a dungeon, and then he was so cool in the dungeon, they made a whole, raid around him.
Oh, I have not seen that. That's awesome.
So there's a Diablos and a Diablos Prime that has.
I can't wait till many years later people are playing 14 or whatever the new Final Fantasy is with Diablos. Oh wow, where's he from? I don't know. I haven't the only Final Fantasy games that exist are 1 through 7 and 9 through the rest. So he's not there.
Yeah, they just don't know how to count. I mean, they have got so 7-2 Advent Children is actually 8, right?
Yeah, that must be it. Which also did not have Diablo, so I'm just confused.
Well, I don't think there is an HD version of 8 yet, outside of what the PC.
I was just gonna say maybe they'll release the PC port.
Well, no, they put the PC port on Steam, but they didn't put that. They put the PC port of 7 onto PS4, right? Mm. So they didn't put the PC port of 8 onto consoles yet. So that's probably what's going on with
this. This is notable. So the PC port of 8 was somewhat they didn't think this all the way through, or rather they didn't really consult with the original development team, because the CGI scenes in 8 were not intended to be viewed at high definition. Yeah. And as a result, there's a lot of goofy Easter eggs that were in there because they couldn't be seen, on a standard, tiny progressive scan television at 220 or whatever the PlayStation,
the 240,
whatever its video,
like an overscan and stuff.
So for example, the scene where they shoot themselves to the moon, so that
no, because I didn't play it through 8.
Well, there's a scene. There's a scene where they get in like a capsule and they get shot to the moon where there's a moon base, and on the side of the capsule launcher it says that it's called like the tin can launcher, which was a thing that was written on there by some animator who, like a Bowie fan, who thought that it would never be seen because you can't make it out very easily on the standard definition version of the game. But you can see it clear as day if you take a screenshot on the PC version. And for some people that adds a lot of character, but the game clearly kind of needs to be like tweaked.
Yeah, well, didn't they do that? Didn't they do that for Final Fantasy VII as well? Like somewhere on Genova, it says like "Made in Hong Kong" or something, and it's like what?
I'm sure that also has the same problem.
Yeah.
But the game is so popular that's never stopped them from just shoving it onto everything that they can.
Yeah.
It makes me happy because now 7 will actually be on a Nintendo console, which means having Cloud and Smash Bros. Actually makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that comic of Homer Simpson, just all of my I did this, I put this on the Switch, I put this on the Switch, I got everything, and it has like the picture of Bart sitting in his baseball gear, all sad in the middle of the rain because he forgot him, but with that dumpy Squall pixelated face from Hey Squall,
you look kind of cool.
You're the best looking guy here.
Yes.
Best looking guy here, and
it's just pixels,
garbage face.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I forgot. I remembered everything in Final Fantasy. It's just oh.
Well, Chocobo's dungeon is getting.
All they need to do now is bring Air Guys over and not 8.
Well,
God bless the ring.
Tobal number 1.
Yeah, they need to bring over Tobal number 2. Come on.
So what they should do is they should bring over Brave Fencer Musashi with the Final Fantasy VIII demo that came with the game, but not Final Fantasy VIII.
Dude. There's an idea.
The game that people literally only bought because it had the demo to Final Fantasy VIII in most cases.
And then they played Final Fantasy VIII and they're like, oh.
And they should release the third birthday, but not Parasite Eve.
There's a reason for that, right? Didn't they lose the rights to use the book? That's why it's called Third Birthday and not Parasite Eve 3 or something. So that's actually so it's not one of the PlayStation games that you can buy on the PS Store right now, right? For that reason.
Oh, really? Because I did buy it. I mean, this was years ago, but I did buy it.
Is it? No. The Parasite Eve games 1 and 2 are on PSN.
Oh, all right.
I downloaded them on my Vita.
Never mind, then I redact my statement. But nonetheless, they couldn't use it in Third Birthday.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out, the book's pretty good.
Hilarious. Yeah, it is.
I mean, the games are pretty good, too.
The games are very good. Well, I haven't played
the first one's pretty good. The third one is just a mess.
Well, I'm excited because I actually liked the concept of Crystal Chronicles. I mean, that was before games like that really existed, a co-op RPG. Mm-hmm. So the major issue, which I still don't think they are getting around, I think I still saw them with the Chalice in the game, which, why didn't you take this opportunity to revamp the fact that you don't need you shouldn't need a Chalice? Mm-hmm. You should just really have somebody be the leader and control where the screen goes, and have people only be able to go to the edges of the screen. I mean, that's how it worked in Marvel Ultimate Alliance and things like that.
You know what they need to do is, you know how Smash Brothers on the Wii U released that multi-tap for 4 GameCube controllers? They need to do that for Crystal Chronicles and release a multi-tap for 4 Game Boy Advances with link cables, and just have us hunt those things down.
When this game came out, I went the whole 9 yards. A couple of my roommates had GBAs, and I bought all the link cables, and we convinced ourselves to shell out $10 each as college students.
Yeah.
Dating myself a little bit here. And although since my name is OldManStompy, it can be assumed that I was decrepit even then. And we just never played the game. It was just like too much to get into. I remember playing it a little bit and thinking that it was extremely grindy because like you can play the dungeons over and over again for permanent stat upgrades, and we just like never got 4 people together. But the idea was extremely cool, and I'm sure it works better on the Switch when you can do online multiplayer. It does have online multiplayer, right? Like, please tell me.
And not only that, but yeah, it does. But not only that, but like you could also feasibly have people with 4 Switches playing the game in the same room.
Sure.
With link cables for each Switch.
Well, they're called battery cables because all the other 3 Switches will be dead.
But wait, you have to you have to sit there with your Switch, and also like for anybody who gets the upgraded Switch, you need to have a link cable converter. Because it's going to be a different socket.
It's a GameCube game, so you all also need your GameCube to Switch adapters, so you can play with the Smash Bros.
Your
GameCube
Game Boy
controller.
Advance to GameCube to Switch adapter.
And you need an extension cord because GameCube cords are so fucking short for no goddamn reason.
And the Wavebird has like tremendous input lag, like shocking amounts of it. I remember my dad tried to go back and play the Mario Golf game for the GameCube, and he was just exceedingly frustrated by the fact that he just could not wrap his brain around how much like input delay he kept missing the second button input to hit a power shot by like large amounts because he just could not get the timing down for the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I mean, I was around in this era and buying all this stuff, though I could say that I think the better execution of the concept was 4 Swords Adventures for the GameCube. So I think that was actually a better game. I actually really liked the execution of that, except for all of the hardware that was needed.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the social experiment they tried to do, like, by having this game, and it also brought Final Fantasy back to Nintendo after it hadn't been on a Nintendo console for, like, 1.5 console generations, like, following the SNES. And I guess that happened again, right? Because they announced that Crystal Chronicles is coming to the Switch, and here comes the fucking parade of Final Fantasy, like literally the next day.
Yeah, I mean, this is the era, I think, in which these things could work. Now, I think it would have also been cool if they included the other Crystal Chronicles games, the DS ones. There were 2 DS games. That would have been cool if they did a whole collection of them, because I think the Switch is a good home for all three of them. But I guess they're looking to see if this works. But they should have reworked the mechanics, because that was the major problem with them.
Yeah, see, that's it, right? Those two DS games, I think I played them. I know I played them. I don't think they have the pop mechanic, the miasma mechanic at all.
No, they don't.
That's why I managed to play them, because they're, unlike the regular Crystal Chronicles, it's very conceivable to play them with no hiccups whatsoever, totally by yourself. So I didn't have to worry about finding 3 of my friends with Game Boy Advances, just to play like one dungeon without driving myself crazy, bringing the Moogle that carries the pot for you when you're playing in single player mode. I remember when we started playing Triforce Heroes, one of the challenges is the something equivalent to the miasma.
It's literally that, yeah.
Like fuck, we're playing Crystal Chronicles again. I hated this game when I played it the first time around.
In fact, that was the first thing we ever did together, which was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so it turns out the game gets way easier, but like I was just this is my life, I guess.
When you're not playing challenge mode, like Crystal Chronicles challenge mode in a Zelda game, yes, that I appreciated that wasn't necessary.
I will say this though, this is one thing that frustrates me, because that orb is a pain in the ass, but the Triforce Heroes missions that say beat the level, like beat the dungeon in X amount of time, that restriction is so goddamn tight. Like, I question whether it's possible to do it single player. Like, it is insanely hard.
I'm sure someone's done it on YouTube, and we'll go look it up later, and we'll all feel really stupid, or we'll gaze in awe at their proficiency at a game that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
Well, there have been some notable like better executions of this concept. So one game that like used like all these different hardware things that was actually a lot of fun was Pac-Man Versus, and that got actually put on the Switch with the Namco collection, and you could play it without all of that unnecessary like link cables and all that garbage. So I think this is a good time for them to make up for that kind of stuff. I would like Nintendo to maybe make a revamped version of the 2 Four Swords Avengers games. That would be really neat on the Switch. I think that could work really well, because think about it. I mean, you can carry around 4 controllers with the system really easily. So in fact, I don't know whether you guys saw this or not, but they announced Towerfall for the Switch. Did you guys see this?
I'm sure I saw it on a previous Direct. Didn't? Oh, the Nindies Direct, I think it was the one in between the two.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did want to mention this really quick. It's going to be the definitive version of Towerfall. We're big fans of Towerfall in our group. We play it a lot at gatherings. It's going to be 6-player.
Wow.
Which is really neat. And it will have extra characters and levels. So, exclusive to the Switch.
Nice.
So, but I think it's the perfect like multiplayer system, because you could hook it up so easily, and it's so like lightweight.
They've also got Overcooked, which is like what I consider to be one of the other transcendent like couch multiplayer experiences from the current console generation, at least on the independent side.
Sure. No, I'm totally with that. But yeah, getting back to Final Fantasy, I think we never got to Chocobo's Dungeon 1, so that's a pretty great deal that we're getting a version of that. I believe that's a roguelike, if I'm not mistaken.
I want to say yes, it's a roguelike.
I think we only got Chocobo's Dungeon 2 on the PlayStation, and maybe a Chocobo's Dungeon sequel on the DS.
We definitely got one on the DS. So I'm trying to recall this because they were kind of a spin-off, like after they merged with Square Enix, this was a spin-off of like the Tornico's Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It was Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon, right?
Right, so originally Enix had like Dragon Quest IV had a merchant character who was like the jester of that game, called I think it was Tornico in Japan, and Tulun in the first US version. And he got his own series of spin-off games that were roguelikes. And then they took that, and after they Enix merged with Square, they spun it off into a Chocobo-related game.
Weren't they kind of spin-offs of the Shiren the Wanderer series as well? They were like somehow related.
I don't know. So there was a Shiren game for DS, and I don't think it was made by Square, but maybe I've forgotten.
Yeah, I think the Shiren games. I need to look those up, but they're somehow related. I think they're all made by Chunsoft. All of those games are made by Chunsoft.
Mystery Dungeon Shiren the Wanderer by Chunsoft. You're correct.
Yeah. So, and Chunsoft makes all of the Dragon Quest games, right? So that makes sense, or most of them.
Right. Well, so the one for the DS is explicitly a follow-up to Tornico's Mystery Dungeon.
Okay. Gotcha. So they're all and the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games are also related in some way too. So like all those Mystery Dungeon games are spin-offs of that concept. Right. That's cool. I mean, roguelikes are very much in vogue right now, so I'm all for that. Especially if it's a Final Fantasy one, people will probably be into it now more than they probably were back then. Roguelikes were not popular back then. In fact, people really hated when they bought a game and it had rogue elements in it. They just didn't want to deal with it back then. I remember when was it Breath of Fire 5 came out, people hated it, and then they gave it some time, and now it's a classic. But yeah, like roguelike stuff back then they were really frustrating to people. People just didn't get the concept.
Well, it's a little bit different than that. So, like, Breath of Fire 5 was not what I'd call a roguelike. Part of what frustrates people, I think, is just the idea that, one mistake... Like, they're very frustrating. They don't communicate any of the mechanics to you. You have to learn everything by experimentation. But if you die, all of your progress is wiped.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
So the reason the games have become successful lately is because more games in the mold of, like, Binding of Isaac, which are roguelites that have some meta progress,
Yeah.
in the form of unlocks or like enhanced versions of the dungeon that like express themselves through multiple playthroughs and make the game grow even as you die. Like that's why we keep talking about these kinds of games that have these like methodical combat approaches. Why games like Monster Hunter and Dark Souls have become so good, because they have some mechanism for rewarding a player who learns through failure. And they use that failure as a boundary to teach you how to play the game very effectively. And that's not something that old roguelikes did. Those were puzzles to be solved, and they targeted themselves towards players who were interested in that kind of experience. And like, it's not clear to me. Like, obviously, I'm sure the Mystery Dungeon series, like, they don't have quite permadeath. Like, you clear a dungeon and then you never have to go back to it even if you die. So there is like some form of progress.
Sure.
Right? So
yeah, there is.
But
you have to get to certain checkpoints.
And it's also like it's based off of Pokemon. So if you have played Pokemon in the past, the entire game is not going to be a total mystery to you. So that makes it a little bit easier to wrap your brain around. I'm not sure it's for everybody. But,
yeah,
you know,
I think people will be more open to it now than they were, for sure.
I mean, yeah.
I certainly was not open to it back then, and I'm much more open to it now.
I have almost never, like, played those games, except for Binding of Isaac, and now a little bit of Enter the Gungeon. You know, and so, like, I'm interested in trying it again, because I've always seen the Chocobo Mystery Dungeon game for the DS. I never picked it up. Maybe now I'll finally get it.
Well, here's the thing. I also like watching people play these. Like, I would love to watch Lotus Prince play any roguelike, because I just like watching him play this type of game. They're very streamable.
Yeah.
So,
I did stream Baroque, even though that game's friggin' weird.
Yeah, I would love to watch that stream. You know, that I'm sorry I missed it. In fact, I'm glad it's archived. But I love stuff like that. And in fact, one of my favorite episodes of Game Center CX is when Arena played Shiren the Wanderer for the Super Famicom. I love that episode. It's not a game I would ever... I think it's a little too hardcore for me. It's a little too punishing for me, but I would watch somebody play it, because it's a fun experience watching them get better at it. For sure. So I'm cautiously optimistic about that game in particular. Out of all the ones that were announced, it's probably the one I'm least likely to get. I'd much probably rather get Crystal Chronicles than this game, because Crystal Chronicles, at least I played through most of that game with my friends when it was originally out for the GameCube, so I do have some nostalgia for it, despite its shortcomings. But I think it is really cool that we are getting portable versions of some of these games, like 7 and 9. Obviously, you know, you could play those on the Vita. Same with 10 and 10-2, though you could play those on the Vita. But I thought the Vita was a good home for RPGs in general, especially classic ones. And I'm glad that those games are getting another chance on a portable system here. But this is the first time we're seeing 12 on a system, and I still haven't played it yet. So I'm all for playing 12 on the Switch. I bought it for PC because I wanted to play it when it re-released for PC, but I'm gonna get it for Switch because that's a game you can sink a lot of time into. So I'm all for playing that game on the Switch. I wish they would. You know what I really wish they would put on there? The original Xenoblade Chronicles. Now that the sequel's on there, and they're releasing more for the both Xenoblades for the Wii and the Wii U.
Yeah, the original
great on
the original
Switch.
game is still a Wii exclusive, isn't it?
Yeah, so
Actually, it's on
it came out for the 3DS.
Yeah, I forgot.
It came out for the new 3DS.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have actually made it through the whole game if I hadn't been able to pick it up on my 3DS. I really hate buying games multiple times. But once I just I was at the store and I convinced myself to pick it up. And it took me 80 hours, but I actually beat the game. And I will still say that if I had the option and the time, I'd probably rather play it on console because it is held back a little bit, by the technology of the 3DS, right?
Yeah,
and I liked it. Yeah. I liked it well enough when I was playing it, but I look at it on the Wii once, and that's the Wii 2 console generations ago, and I wish that I could have sat down and played that version. But
other than Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, it's probably the most beautiful game made for that system.
Yeah, I mean, once again, you take
down.
like a big, ambitious game and you put it on an inferior, tiny system.
Yep.
That it was not designed for.
I mean, luckily they didn't really add anything, so you're not missing anything other than
that is fortunate.
The portability of it.
Right.
Now, I bought it for new 3DS as well, but when I started playing it, I was like, this doesn't perform well enough. I'm just gonna go back to the Wii version. So that's what I ended up doing. But if they put it out on the Switch, I would be so much happier for sure. But I think we covered Final Fantasy and the online features of the Nintendo Switch pretty well here on this episode. So I think we should move on to our regular segments. Vice's weigh-in. What?
So I will say that Nintendo very nearly did the same thing to the rest of us. They very nearly moved on without giving like a small section of the fan base exactly what they wanted, right? With this Nintendo Direct.
Oh, I forgot about this. So yeah, you have to make your announcement.
It's funny too because you tried to give me the window earlier, and I punted it back to you for a little while because we forgot to talk about the online service.
Go right ahead.
So
I'm sorry.
I remember that the last Nintendo Direct ended with like this incredibly trolly announcement of King K. Rool, where it looks like they're about to announce him, but instead you just get like fucking King DDD, who's voiced by Sakurai, laughing at you for like 15 seconds.
That was hilarious.
And then K. Rool comes in and beats the shit out of him, and you get your actual K. Rool announcement. And you know what it's going to be. It can't possibly be anything else. Like the silhouette they show cannot be anything other than K. Rool. The setup of the trailer is all K. Rool. So like they took that troll and they pushed it to like the next fucking level for this Nintendo Direct. So like one of the franchises besides maybe Metroid that we have just not gotten for like a whole console generation is Animal Crossing, right? And I'm the person to ask about this because I played Animal Crossing and my wife played Animal Crossing each.
Oh, you didn't like that Wii U one?
Yeah,
where
exactly.
They, came out with all the fucking
so on the Wii U they turned Animal Crossing into some fucking vehicle to sell shitty amiibos that nobody wanted and just like stacked up and took up all this inventory space at Walmart that could have been used for like the Smash Brothers ones.
And ruined the amiibo brand.
Yeah, it basically like
there.
diluted the brand by giving people these amiibos that don't do anything for a game that nobody wanted. As much as I love Animal Crossing and we bought the game because it had an amiibo, and it's Animal Crossing. We tried our best, to this was the tough times. Like we tried really hard to stick with the Animal Crossing brand through like the worst part of its life cycle. And then they went ahead and they released the mobile game, which got people excited. Like, Nintendo doesn't usually release a mobile game unless they're planning on announcing a game in that series. Like, they had Mario Run before Odyssey, they had Fire Emblem Heroes before they did Echoes, and the new one, Three Kingdoms. And they did Pokemon Go, which obviously now plays into their attempt to do a console version of Pokemon Go. And so they had this Animal Crossing game, which, was about what you'd expect from a mobile version of Animal Crossing. It's got a little bit of customization. It's like a light version of the real game. Like the original game was already heavily reliant on time gating, so it fit really well into the mobile aesthetic. Aside from the fact that it had like microtransaction currency, and whoever was, I don't know which developer was responsible for making the game. It definitely wasn't an in-house Nintendo product, but they have like no fucking clue what microcurrency is supposed to cost. Like the prices for everything are absurd. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it used to be that
it should be $1 or cents, right?
Well,
that's what microtransactions
so
are on mobile games.
It costs like a fixed amount of money, and it's always been the same amount of money. But like what you get for that money has like oscillated wildly over the course of the lifespan of the game, and I just have I have no idea. So it used to be that you could just spend money for time. You could spend money to make up for like crafting items that you wouldn't have to grind. Or, when you'd craft things, you'd pay the meta currency to get it faster, so you don't have to wait a day.
That's pretty normal for that type of game.
But it costs so much, like $20 for a thing, that no person in their right mind would ever do that. Even like the Japanese whales who make up the bulk of most like microtransaction markets. Like, we're not spending any money on this game. So they just put in regular like loot box style stuff where you get like furniture from fortune cookies, and they charge like some small amount of money for that, and that seemed to do really well. Now the game's making a lot of money, most of it from Japan, but like all the other things you buy you spend like the tickets on are like practically worthless except for the regular gacha. They just cannot figure it out, and it really it drives me crazy. And the reason that I'm still so upset about it is that they finally announced an actual Animal Crossing game. Like I said, they did it in like the trolliest way possible. They ended the Nintendo Direct. They told you to watch to the end. They put a little scene that looks like it's from Animal Crossing, and they plaster like a not actual gameplay footage like all over the screen, like very visibly. And then it turns out you're like, oh my god, it's Animal Crossing. It's finally time for a real Animal Crossing game. First time since the 3DS one, which was like the first big Nintendo release for the 3DS that wasn't a port of an existing game.
Sure.
It was at one point. It had like a
Wait! You're forgetting Steel Diver?
Yes, I am forgetting. So is everybody else. Well, I don't know. Like you never know. Like the people who listen to this podcast have all manner of obscure preferences in gaming. So I don't want to
Steel Diver.
There was a sequel to Steel Diver that was like a
Steel Diver is one of the few games that I do remember, because when the 3DS was new, I was like, oh, Steel Diver, it's a new game, it's for the 3DS, and I just never knew what it was, and I kind of remember it for that reason. It's just that weird game that just kind of existed on store shelves. It's a submarine game, I guess.
So it reminds me of when like the Mortal Kombat collection came out for Nintendo 64. That for a long time it was just Mario 64 and Pilot Wings, and those were the only games you could buy for the first like month the system was out. And then they added Mortal Kombat, and there were 3 games, and I kept going to the store and thinking, I guess I could buy Mortal Kombat again. I really wanted it. Like,
don't you want to play as Chameleon?
It looked so pathetic if you go into like EB Games and you see like a stack of N64 consoles and literally 3 games, and those are the only 3 games that are out for the entire console.
Well, like in Japan, usually a system releases like with one first-party title and like a shogi and like a pachinko game.
Well,
so like I mean, it's better than
that. Does not fly. That does not fly anymore these days.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
But anyway, back to Animal Crossing. Like you were saying.
So yeah, Animal Crossing. So the whole scene turns out to be like it becomes more obvious that it's an announcement for Isabelle as a character in Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, she's adorable. The best the joke I've already seen is that
furries into her.
She's got like
furries are way.
Yeah. Well, I mean they already had Sonic and Shadow, and they had Crystal, and I don't know.
Yeah, at least Isabella doesn't come with
I
butt
didn't know
rock.
that there was a fan base for this character though. Like they sexualize her in a lot of like fan drawings of this character.
Welcome to every video game character ever made.
Yeah, but this is not surprising.
This character I didn't even know about. I didn't even know this character existed until this thing.
I mean, she is like one of the. She was a trophy in Smash Brothers, and she is like one of the most important NPCs in the more recent versions of Animal Crossing. It isn't a story-driven game, so that's probably why you didn't really notice that she was a character. But like she's on the pure maiden side of characters that like internet nerds obsess over. So. Like, the statement is that, like, her best defense is that nobody will have the heart to actually attack her. But, of course, Mr. Ryu sent me a picture of just, like, little Max punching her the fuck out. It was
just punching.
Yeah, doing just, like, one-hit KO, like, well, bam! It's like, oh, what?
Right. So,
funny as hell.
so, and after that, after the Smash trailer is over, the screen goes dark, and another screen comes up, this time of Tom Nook just sitting at his desk, watching the trailer that you just watched. Then it ends, and, like, he just sits there in the darkness for, like, a while. And then he like starts like clicking on his light, and it won't turn on. And you're just watching this like, what am I watching? Like, is this a trailer? Like,
well, I thought they were gonna announce Tom Nook as a character. I thought that was the whole point of
exactly
that.
So
Yeah.
Everybody expected. There were actually leaks too that people were pitching that there would be an Animal Crossing game announced at this direct. So people were expecting it, and they really felt like all hope was gone. Like after the first Isabelle thing passed over. So, like, they did a really good job of convincing people the trailer was actually a trailer for Tom Nook a second time around. Just like the Simon trailer had Richter come in at the end. Like,
that was
Nintendo has done a really good job of training your expectations over the course of, like, several hours of trailer footage.
They were just trolling us. That's all that was. Yeah.
So, of course, at the end, he just says, like, well, you'll all be tired after playing the camping game and the Smash Bros. Game, so I guess I'm back to work, because Isabelle's in the other game. And then they just show a splash screen of Animal Crossing 2019. That's all. No gameplay footage. Just...
Well, that's almost like Bethesda, where, like, people have wanted Elder Scrolls 6 for a million years, even though Skyrim is only like 7 years old. Like they've just like they've just wanted Elder Scrolls 6 like maybe this year it'll happen, and Bethesda will release like a Twitter statement that'll be like, oh, there's talk, so maybe, I don't know, and like nothing comes of it, and then finally at E3 you pretty much just get a splash screen of Elder Scrolls 6 and nothing else. It's like, it is happening. We all kind of assumed it would be anyway,
Metroid Prime
but alright.
4 in 4 years.
Yeah.
Nintendo already did this with Metroid Prime 4. I think that's what Vice is referring to.
Yeah.
Just a screen that says 4 on it. Right? That was the trailer. And like people flip their shit, because that's really exciting.
No,
that's why I mentioned it. It's another franchise that skipped the whole Wii U for a new game.
No, I still think my favorite though was the people like before Shenmue 3 became known, like people holding out for Shenmue 3 because there's the diehard fans. Shenmue 2 came out on the Dreamcast, or in America's case the Xbox, and they're like, well, there's got to be a Shenmue 3 that ended on a cliffhanger. When are they going to have Shenmue 3? And like it was like Half-Life 3, people kept holding out because there's a chance. And then finally somebody looked on some like business website where it showed that the copyright had expired, and they're like, wow. I mean, I kind of assumed it was dead, but now it's officially dead. And then like the Kickstarter comes up and it was like, oh! It was like the most insane reveal ever.
They really got me. They waited
incredible.
15 years for the copyright to lapse. They
Yeah,
really
that was
got us good that time.
ridiculous.
That was the long con.
Yeah, no kidding.
So yeah,
Well,
I'm super excited that Animal Crossing's coming out. Like, fuck Shenmue, I don't really care about that, but like...
we could talk about Sailors some other time. We should talk about my weight
Sailors.
instead. I actually lost another pound.
Hey.
So I'm down to 252. So I'm on the way, doing my thing. So, it took me a little while to get kickstarted there, but once again, I tell people that I've been telling people this all along, and I've been trying not to get discouraged as a result. But sometimes you need to get in the right mindset, and doing something like this helps me get in the right mindset, and it did. It eventually worked. It stopped me from gaining weight, which was my problem, and I was just staying the same for a while. And now I'm turning in the right direction, a pound here, a pound there, and that's a good way to lose weight. Losing a little bit here and there over time is the way to do it.
Well, yeah,
don't be fooled by those diets.
I was just gonna bring that up. Like with some things where it's like I lost 30 pounds in like a couple of weeks. It's like that is
you don't wanna
radically
do that.
unhealthy. Like either you had liposuction or you have a problem other than weight.
They also tend to rely, like, diets that are that fast tend to rely on, like, dehydrating you and costing you a lot of water weight.
Yeah, the water
for those
weight,
quick
which
results.
there is something to water weight being a thing, but like you don't dehydrate yourself.
They also, like, they use a lot of, like, diuretics that clean out your intestines and, like, cost you your gut biome, basically, making it really hard for you to digest stuff. They're really bad for you for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Not only that, but they're very temporary. So you yo-yo in your weight going up and down.
Yeah, which is also unhealthy.
And yeah, if you have one of those trendy diets, you'll lose a lot of weight. A lot of people are very successful on them, but then they'll fall off the wagon because they're not putting up with being on those extreme diets anymore, and they'll gain all their weight back right away.
Actually,
doing it the way that I'm doing it is going to, it's going to be hard for me to gain weight. Just as hard as it is for me to lose weight, it's going to be hard for me to gain weight.
Yeah, because
and that's the way it
I was going to say, even outside the context of extreme diets, even with regular, like, more, quote, legitimate, like, weight loss, like, a lot of people forget that you're kind of on a diet for the rest of your life. You can't just say, perfect, 150 pounds or whatever it was, no more diet for me, and they go back to eating the way they used to and they gain weight again. It's like, no, it's forever.
No, I've changed my habits, and I have a less lethargic lifestyle, and I'm definitely getting more and more healthier habits and cooking for myself more and more. So this is the way to do it. I'm convinced. I've done the extreme weight loss thing. You actually knew me during that time period. I didn't even follow an extreme weight loss. I was so meticulous about my calorie counting that it was nuts. I was on a 1,200 calorie diet, and I was like very adamant about it, and it was way too small of a diet for me. I should have been on 1,500 or 1,800, and I was on a 1,200. I was really extreme about my.
You can't go straight from 0 to 60.
Yeah, and that's what I did, and I lost like 100 pounds in basically under a year, and it was not healthy. I gained it all back as a result, and over time I gained it back, but I didn't keep it on. I didn't stay low for very long.
Yeah.
I stayed around 200 for a long time, so that was good, and that's where I want to end up back at. Because I think my body, it was very difficult for me to maintain under 200. It was very difficult. But I was down to 145 at one point. And you knew how much I lost.
No, I do remember I have pictures of you from college in like various stages, and it's like you can like it's not like you can at a glance just see the obvious difference. From one stage to another.
My facial structure changed. Yeah. My facial structure
No, it did.
Changed.
Yeah.
It was crazy. In fact, my facial structure changed so much that even though I gained a bunch of weight back, it still wasn't what it was before my major weight loss. It's kind of funny. Is now I'm back to where I was, but my face looks different than then because I lost so much weight in my face. Yeah. And when I didn't grow it. I didn't gain it back. It's kind of funny how that worked. But anyway, anybody who's having struggles with this kind of thing, just remember that there's support out there for you to do it, and just keep at it. It takes a long time and it sucks, but just you need to get into a good spot in order to be good at it, and that's part of what I did here. So, you might have been getting frustrated, hey, maybe he's not taking it seriously, or maybe you didn't give a damn, but, it was important to me in order to get into the right headspace for this, and it worked. Sometimes self-improvement is, I think self-improvement in a lot of ways is all a mind game, and you have to train yourself into it, and that's it, and it takes time. So anyway, we should move on to comments here. Lotus, could you take it away, please?
Right. So, yeah, fan comments. We have General Ledger has a response regarding the question of ways games show you that enemies are getting tougher as you advance in the game. Like in God Hand, they just get bigger. So, General Ledger says, regarding increasing enemy toughness, I do agree with Pyro that you shouldn't have to die to realize that they're more powerful. Like, all of a sudden, oh, damn, I guess I'm underleveled. For boss battles, I prefer an audio cue that the boss is changing tactics or becoming more powerful, like the music speeding up and intensifying, or the boss's voice becoming deeper or more eldritch. That's a clever idea, or even, like, this is me, Lotus Prince, talking, but even something like a lot of RPGs where, like, now I'm mad, and, like, they power up and you're like, oh, shit. As for minions, I'd rather their animations showcase their strengths. Power hitters missed strikes going from heavy thuds to like cracking the ground or something, or emitting shockwaves, and evasive enemies being visibly faster or teleporting around the arena. I'd rather visual cues be reserved for hinting new abilities or tactics, like an enemy dripping with ooze would hint at a poisonous attack, or flaming mouth for dragon breath, or soldiers running in with bandoliers of grenades or riot shields.
I like this.
Yeah, that is pretty clever. It's little things like, I mean, how many times do we talk about Dark Souls? But Dark Souls does have like the clearly sickly or dripping with poison enemies probably going to hit you with some sort of toxicity status or things like that. It's pretty fun seeing stuff like that and figuring it out. Or if you don't, then the game will explain it to you very, very carefully.
In the best way possible.
I know. Also, you died. Dracologist says that this is going back to Hollow Knight. I think Hollow Knight has the problem that aside from precision platforming and boss fights that always go just a tad longer than would be comfortable, it has contact damage, which makes fights less enjoyable. As for the badges, they always have a promising description, but in reality they have some sort of trade-off. Aside from a few, not many are actually useful. Regarding Vita, it has Severed, the Metroidvania-like game, and Sundered, in other games, like Xenocyte Clad and Way of the Red.
Severed was a good title. I actually ended up picking that up on Vita back then as well. That was a really good platform for it. It's also on the Switch now.
Actually, Vice...
That's made by the Guacamelee people.
Pyro did a segment on it when he played it, and he mentioned that you had recommended it to him quite some time ago.
Yeah. Quite a good game. It's like a wizardry style or Stonekeep, if you will, style.
The good Stonekeep.
But it has interesting touchscreen style combat, and I really enjoyed it, and it has a good storyline.
Yeah.
I didn't finish it, but I got pretty far.
So Dragalogist goes on to say you also can get cursed if you break a pay door. And this one I feel bad about, because we're talking about the Dark Souls games, how they kind of count as Metroidvania, and Dracologist says, what, no mention of Shadow Man? Yeah, I really dropped the ball on that. That was the game I've been Let's Playing for, like, the entire month.
Is that a Metroidvania?
It's like Dark Souls before Dark Souls. Like, it's not the you die and lose your experience. There's no experience in the game, but, the level design and world design, it is kind of Dark Souls 1-like. There are loading screens between large areas, but you can see how, in another universe, Shadow Man could have been the prototype of Dark Souls.
Oh, kind of like Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver was kind of like that too.
I still gotta play that. But he says, as mentioned, MMO and TQ games, monster names and size. So this is regarding the enemies getting stronger. Monsters' names and size. Green is under you, white is equal, red is dangerous, black is like death. That said, enemies are slightly more dangerous than Skittles, though. But aside from that, making enemies more visually different, I don't know if there's a way that can be marked better. And he said the Hollow Knight thing with the orange blight is in the basic game. And the last thing he mentioned was, I think we had talked about in Bloodborne, the enemy that, like, kills you by looking at you, where it, like, hits you with a frenzy status. Dracologist is saying frenzy is probably more like your blood is being boiled out of your body, which I can buy. Bloodborne is all about the blood. Also gross. Fakafon says another example of enemies getting harder is like in the first Zelda or Streets of Rage 2, where enemies would change colors. Of course. An example of a game that does not illustrate enemy strength well would be Illusion of Gaia. The enemies never look tougher, they just are. So it doesn't feel like you're taking on stronger enemies, it feels like you're the same as you were at the beginning of the game. That is, it's like they still take 5 hits or whatever, that is pretty frustrating.
Enter the Gungeon does this too. There's like some subtle enemy scaling, and so like they throw some of the hardest enemies at you even at the start of the game. Or like upgraded versions of the basic enemies early on, and they just get more health as they go, which is not one of the stronger points of the game. It just isn't obvious for a while because the game is so hard in other ways.
Yeah, that's the thing I like about Isaac, is that the enemy's health is always the same. Harder enemies will appear. It's just that once you've played the game enough, you get a direct notification that says the game is now harder, so you might see like upper level enemies earlier, but there's no health scaling or whatever, it's just your damage output that matters.
With Enter the Gungeon, you begin to know which enemies to take out first, and how to manage a room, and how to manage a crowd. That's really the skill that builds up in that game. So eventually, you don't really notice. Like even upgraded versions of enemies are generally not.
Well, that's sort of what I mean. Like the vector at which you improve is not only just like getting better guns. Although I will say that like some of the like accuracy in that game is kind of measured in like how the game like snaps from where you fire to the enemy a little bit. Yeah. Like so. So sometimes when you're like close to the end of a run and you've got like a lot of like sniper rifles or other like long range guns, sometimes you just walk into a room shooting and you've killed like 2 things and you don't know what they are. and like that's fine, you know, but like it kind of throws prioritizing enemies out the window, and you don't like see how their patterns are supposed to interact with the rest of the enemies in the room.
That's why you should just always use your sidearm, man. I mean, what are you, weak sauce?
I am very weak sauce. I am happy to be weak sauce if it gets me to the end of the game. I make no apologies for anything that I do aside from like actively cheating in a roguelite.
Alright, so
So that's why I've never gotten an apology.
For what?
So the last thing.
Literally every interaction.
So the last thing is a fan question. This one is another one from Fakafon. Have you ever seen in media a moment where the character's physical attribute actually becomes an important plot point? For example, Sweet JP's huge pompadour allowed him to win the red line. Like there's that joke he literally won by a hair. Or in Dragon Ball, like the original Dragon Ball, when Goku used Solar Flare on Tien, and it was super effective because Tien was focusing all of his mini eyes, so it actually like backfired on him. So like what Fakafon is saying is, if a guy is fat and they make constant food jokes, that doesn't count. It's more like if some physical attribute actually factored into something. And I'm assuming he also means something other than, I was born with a strange birthmark and I never knew what it meant, and it's the plot like no bullshit like that. Like something like the hair or stuff like that.
Well, what about the fugitive? Like that's the whole point of the movie, that he gets
I haven't seen
wrong. The point of the movie is that he's on the run because he's wrongly accused, because he's a one-armed man who's wrongly accused of murdering his wife, who was actually killed by a different one-armed man.
Jesus.
No, Harrison Ford wasn't a one-armed man.
That was the plot.
He was a doctor.
That was the plot of the original, maybe, like the television show that it was based off of.
Maybe the television.
Maybe because
show.
I know that the one-armed man thing is supposed to be like a really old reference, and the fugitive was what, the 90s.
Yes.
Yes, the movie was. Yeah.
Yes, arrives home to find his wife fatally wounded by a one-armed man.
Okay. No, what about the Nicolas Cage movie Face Off, where the physical attribute is that he has John Travolta's face, and John Travolta has Nicolas Cage's face?
And they took his face.
It turned out it was relevant to the plot.
So I'm part of a trivia league, and one of the questions was like, what Broadway play? It lists like, these are all the Tony Award-winning plays that had a slash in the name, and like fill in the last blank. And for some reason, the most popular wrong answer was Face Off, which, as far as I know, has never been a Broadway play, and I'm not sure what convinced
maybe way off Broadway.
These were like Jeopardy tier levels of trivia jockeys, and for some reason nobody could serve up the actual name of the fucking movie, and
that is
all
fantastic.
decided to put up. It has to be at least 5% of the league to get that award, which means like several hundred people all thought it would be funny to put face/off.
But they were right. It is funny.
It is pretty funny, but like it's funnier to me that so many people all went to the same place.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Wow, I'm trying to think of because again, a lot of the things I'm thinking of are mentioned real quick, so you know it'll be referenced later, like Scaramanga's third nipple and the man with the golden gun.
Yeah, it's more like foreshadowing. It's more like foreshadowing.
I know, it's like they say
point,
he has
right?
a third nipple on his chest, so like the next scene, Bond puts a fake one on to disguise himself to get into an area. It's like, well,
I also thought of the Princess Bride. That's like the origin
the six
of, like,
finger.
The I am not left-handed thing also, like
that was pretty great. No, but regarding the 6 fingers on your left hand, though, I do kind of like how they handled that one, because like that comes up way later. It's not like the next scene or some bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know. This is a tough one.
Like I'm trying to think of something like Choji from Naruto. Like he was like the fat kid. I'm trying to think of that factoring in, because like I remember there was a fight where he went up like against the enemy fat guy. I don't remember if the physical weight really mattered for the plot though.
I think there are more than a few episodes of Ren and Stimpy where like Stimpy's exaggerated like nostrils like are actually like cavernous.
Oh, that actually is kind of funny. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, like they already look big and cartoonish to begin with. Like
yeah.
You know, because of course they're cartoons, but like they exaggerate the fact later on in the series.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean?
I do like that, where something is drawn really exaggerated cartoon style, and then you realize later that that's actually real within the context of the show. Like it's hard to think of things like that, but I love stuff like that. Like this isn't even the plot. This was like a Cartoon Network like interlude, just advertising various shows like Super Friends, but they had the Powerpuff Girls appear on it fighting like some of the Legion of Doom or whatever, and they directly called out that their hands are like flippers. They don't have fingers. And it's like, oh, that actually is. It's not just a drawing. Like their hands are like that. Like, okay.
Or like there's an episode of The Simpsons where like Marge runs to like a helicopter and it just cuts her hair straight off.
No, actually, speaking
also,
stuff like that.
The Simpsons has the big one, right? Because God has 5 fingers in The Simpsons, where
no,
everybody else has 4 fingers.
No, there is that, but there's another thing I like. Do you know why The Simpsons are yellow? Why almost every character in The Simpsons is yellow?
Go ahead.
I know this.
Yeah, it was a troll on Matt Groening's part. He did that because he wanted everyone to think that they had to futz with their TV's colors, and so they would adjust the colors until the characters had like traditional white people colored skin, but then like the grass and the sky would be way off. So he's just fucking with the audience in episode 1. That's all it is. But there was an episode. I mean, it's a really old episode by now, but this is like maybe like a season or 2 in, where Bart was in love with was like the babysitter, I think.
Yeah.
And you see him like taking extra care to wash his hands. He was taking a bath or whatever. And Lisa's like, "You're excited about taking a bath?" Because remember, Bart's like an 8 or 9-year-old kid, and it's like, "Oh no, baths!" And Bart's like, "Well, sometimes a man just likes to keep his skin his yellowest," and it's just actually yellow, like just within the universe. I thought that was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I like stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure undoubtedly we'll have more answers for this later, but I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, it's difficult to think of someone who wasn't introduced that episode, and what do you know? Their physical feature matters. It's like it's way more interesting if it's a character you've been following forever, and like one episode just decides to do something interesting.
So I'll throw a couple really quick ones out, because in wrestling this happens a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because that's actually a fight most of the time. So someone asked one of the female wrestlers on Twitter why she wears like long fake nails, which seems like highly impractical.
Yeah.
And she said that it was because all the other female wrestlers are all wearing hair extensions, which are also really impractical, and it helps her get a good grip on it when she's trying
that's
to
amazing.
So,
Oh, actually,
and the other one
go
is
ahead.
that Jeff Hardy, Brother Nero, he has these like giant gauge earrings, like those like big rings that are like in the inside of your earlobes.
Mm-hmm.
And he just had a feud that was basically like Randy Orton, who's in like full asshole mode right now. They had a hardcore match where the gimmick was like Orton's going to show how sadistic he is by like sticking something in that gauge hole, like twisting it or whatever. It's like really, it's like not uncomfortable for Jeff personally for it to happen, but it's like this really cringy visual to watch him stick like a screwdriver in there and twist it, and watch him like twist his earlobes around.
Yeah.
This just happened like literally 2 days ago.
As recently?
Yesterday, actually.
Oh, but by the way, I can actually think of 2 examples I just came up with. One of them only kind of counts as a physical characteristic, like what you were saying about the fake nails and stuff. But in the book, A Confederacy of Dunces, there are many different characters that we follow across the novel. And one of them was someone who was just working as like a stripper in a sleazy bar. Like this whole town was really sleazy, but this was like not a classy like or a more upscale stripping joint. This is just like, I have one person working for me, and this person wanted to try a bit where she's wearing like really loosely held together clothing with little like golden or copper rings or something, and she had this pet parrot that she would get to like pluck one of the rings off or whatever, and the clothes would fall down, and the person running the bar is like, it sounds surprisingly decent, actually. And like across the novel, as we watch the main character, Ignatius Riley, just be more of a fuck up and like not succeed at any job he tries, at one point he just like got a shitty plastic sword from like a Halloween store or something, and like he got like a sash and like a golden pirate earring. He was like just dressing as a pirate, and he happened into the bar because there was someone else he wanted to see there, and the parrot sees this giant golden ring and is like, yes, and it like goes for him. He's like, oh fuck, and like it just causes this like debacle. The other thing I actually really thought was entertaining, it doesn't factor into the plot, but in Metal Gear Solid 3, you play as the man who would later become Big Boss. Like Solid Snake's mentor, who looks just like Solid Snake, but in Metal Gear Solid 3, he has 2 eyes, but you see how he lost one of his eyes and, wears an eye patch and makes that, like, gives that iconic look. There's a fight it's just a cutscene, but there's a fight toward the end of the game where he's doing, like, CQC against young Ocelot, and there's a part where he shoulder throws Ocelot, but Ocelot manages to land on his feet, and then Ocelot shoulder throws Snake, who manages to land on his feet. But just as Snake lands, Ocelot gets a cheap shot in and jabs 2 fingers into his eye, but it's the eye patch eye. So, like, Snake doesn't react at all, and Ocelot's like, oh yeah, and Snake gives him like a little smile before resuming the fight. It was like fantastic.
So I think it's one of the major DC crossovers. I think Identity Crisis that actually has the opposite. That Green Arrow takes out Deathstroke, Slade, like non-lethally by jamming an arrow in his eye patch eye, which apparently like really fucking hurts, despite not doing any permanent damage.
I mean, yeah, of course it does, but I mean, like Ocelot's fingers aren't long enough, and he wasn't like penetrating. It was just like hata. So it basically did nothing, and Snake just looks at him, and Ocelot's like, okay. It was amazing.
I'm just saying, like Vice said, it's probably a very sensitive area, and probably that would have actually hurt on a real person like a bitch.
Yeah, just because the eyeball isn't there doesn't mean that everything that was behind it isn't still there. Especially with Snake, actually. The way he lost his eye, he did not have it removed Kill Bill style, so, like, it probably should have hurt, but fuck it, it's a cool scene.
Think about it like this way: when a girl is kicked in the crotch, they still get kicked.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like in a sensitive area.
Yes.
So like getting kicked in the eye hole is not going to be fun.
No.
You know, like you know what I mean? So anyway, and especially like that area is not supposed to be touched in your body, like you're not supposed to feel the inside of your eye socket.
Oh, but by the way, one last thing I'll mention. This is unofficial, but do you remember that thing that got popular on YouTube for a while a few years ago? That Mortal Kombat, what was it called? Legacy,
yeah,
like the fan made Mortal Kombat.
The fan live action Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
thing,
what if Mortal Kombat were closer to real life? There was something I actually thought was immensely entertaining. The guy who's supposed to be Raiden is in a mental institution because he claims to be the fucking God of Thunder. So, like, he's just in a mental institution. He really can't do much about it. He doesn't have his super strength like he does in the games.
Which is a plot line from Ultimate Avengers.
Yeah, right? But, so, like, he's just in a mental institution. He doesn't have his video game super strength, so it's kind of, like, too bad. Eventually, he starts trying to get out, and one of the orderlies starts beating him down with, like, you know, like the billy club or whatever. And there's not much Raiden can do about it, but Raiden keeps trying to, like, fight back, and eventually the guy's like, alright, buddy, you asked for it, and he tases Raiden, and it, like, really powers him up, and the guy's like, what? And he's just, like, Raiden just starts, like, throwing him around and everything. It was fantastic. Wow. It was a really cool moment.
All right, well, we once again went over on our overtime, so we should wrap things up for this week here on Recon, so, or on CoreCon, rather. So, please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, and I'm sorry, that was supposed to be for Tuesday. I apologize.
Everything's ruined.
Yeah. Catch us on Tuesday on Corrective. If you can't tell, we went a little bit over and needed to correct here.
Yeah,
so
we just ran with it and made a giant reactive.
Yeah, we made one giant reactive, but I don't think anybody will be upset.
I don't know, man. They're pretty adamant about us focusing on the Imperial system, so you never know.
And finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Switch, and next to the Chia Pets in the Walgreens.
I don't know what that means, but you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at
Walgreens.
Yeah, what's a Walgreens? You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, and we got a new one coming up soon, now that Shadow Man's over, or getting involved in a discussion with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks. You can find me as Ovis Aries on Ultra Surfer in Final Fantasy XIV, and as Dobutsu no Mori, which is Japanese for Animal Crossing, on Monster Hunter World, until Animal Crossing comes out, at which point it will be all Animal Crossing all the time, and probably won't even be on the podcast anymore. Just like move into the fucking Animal Crossing world and like quit my job, and I don't know. I don't know what happens after that, man. There hasn't
You'll
even
get
been a
recruited
pro
for
yet.
Smash at some point.
Yes, exactly.
OldManStompy joins the fight.
So we'll catch everybody on Tuesday for another episode of Reactive.
Until next time, everyone.
Cheers.